Let's talk about the Detroit Lions, because just when you thought this front office had finally grown up, a secret video from inside the Baltimore Ravens draft room dropped like a grenade. And now every Lions fan in America is either furious, relieved, or both at the same time. And honestly, same. Absolutely same. Here is the story you need to know, because this thing goes deep. We all watch the 2026 NFL Draft play out on television like we always do. Picks dropping, analysts overreacting, teams doing weird things for no apparent reason. And Detroit? Detroit looked calm, composed, almost boring, if we're being honest. Brad Holmes sat at pick 17, selected Clemson offensive tackle Blake Miller, and the whole thing felt very steady and controlled, like a guy confidently ordering the same meal at the same restaurant for the 5th year in a row. Nothing crazy, nothing reckless. The Lions faithful breathed a little sigh of relief, patted themselves on the back, and said, "Look at our disciplined general manager. Isn't he great?" And then the Ravens dropped their behind-the-scenes draft room video, and suddenly everything we thought we knew flew straight out the window. Because here is what that footage revealed in devastating real-time, unfiltered detail. Brad Holmes was about 30 seconds away from blowing up next year's draft capital to jump from pick 17 all the way up to pick 14 with the Baltimore Ravens. The offer was on the table. The Ravens had serious interest, the clock was ticking, and Lions fans watching that video had their hearts in their throats, because if that trade had gone through, this entire story plays out completely differently. According to the footage and confirmed by NFL insider Ari Merov, Detroit put forward a package that included pick 17, the 118th overall pick, and a 2027 third-round pick, all to move up just 3 spots. 3 spots, people. That is what Brad Holmes was willing to pay to jump from 17 to 14. And on the video, you can hear Ravens Vice President of Football Administration, Nick Mateo, on the phone, voice as cool as a man who does this for a living, saying, "Would you do your original offer? Pick 14 for 17, 118 and next year's 3? We're getting close, because we're at 3 minutes. You're out? Okay, thanks, buddy." And just like that, it was done. The Lions blinked, pulled the offer, and the Ravens went on to select Penn State guard Vega Ioan. Meanwhile, Detroit sat right there at 17 and took Blake Miller anyway, the guy they apparently wanted badly enough to mortgage future picks for, the guy they ended up getting for free. So depending on how you look at it, Brad Holmes is either an absolute genius who played the board perfectly, or a man who almost did something very, very Brad Holmes of him, and got bailed out by the draft board falling exactly right. Now here is where we need to zoom out and have a real conversation, because this is not the first time we have had to have this talk about Brad Holmes and his love of trading up. This is not even close to the first time. And the numbers do not lie. Cast your mind back to the 2024 NFL Draft. Holmes traded up for cornerback Tyrion Arnold at number 24. Traded up again for offensive tackle Giovanni Manu in the 4th round. Traded up again for running back Sione Vaki. 3 separate trade-ups in a single draft, including using future picks to make it happen. The man was on the phones all night like a hyperactive stock trader. And look, some of those picks worked out and some did not. Which brings us to the most important truth in all of football scouting. A truth so simple that even a casual fan knows it in their bones. Roughly half of all draft picks hit. The other half flame out. That is just the reality of the NFL draft, and no amount of draft room wizardry changes that math. You want to maximize your chances? You need more picks, more swings at the plate, more lottery tickets. Simple math, brutal truth. And that is exactly why, when it looked like Holmes had turned over a new leaf this draft cycle, when fans and analysts were celebrating his apparent restraint, the revelation that he nearly shipped off a future third-rounder to move up 3 spots stings just a little bit. Because a third-round pick in the 2027 draft is real money, especially with experts already calling 2027 one of the most loaded draft classes in years. Giving that away to move up 3 spots is a steep price tag for a gamble that ultimately was not necessary. To be absolutely fair to Holmes, and we should be fair here, the Lions GM did offer a pretty sensible explanation after the fact. He said that once the Los Angeles Rams selected Alabama quarterback Ty Simpson at pick 13, right there ahead of the Ravens spot, he felt confident enough that Blake Miller would slide down to them at 17. The board shifted, the urgency evaporated, and Holmes made the right call to stand down. That is smart football thinking. That is a general manager reading the room in real time and adjusting on the fly. Give him credit for that. But, and this is a big but, the offer was already on the table before Miami grabbed Alabama offensive tackle Kaydn Proctor at pick 12, which means Detroit had a specific player in their crosshairs at that moment, And when Proctor disappeared, the entire calculus changed instantly. The smart money says Proctor was the guy Detroit was chasing, the guy they wanted badly enough to put future picks on the line. And once he was gone, Blake Miller at 17 suddenly looked a lot more appealing than burning assets to get to 14 and taking whoever was left. So what did we end up with? The Lions walked out of the first round with Blake Miller, a 54-game starter at Clemson, who fills an immediate need at offensive tackle and fits Detroit's physical, trench-dominant identity perfectly. They then used the draft capital they saved, the picks they did not hand to the Ravens, to trade up in the second round with the New York Jets for Michigan defensive end Derek Moore, a local product who brings exactly the edge rush menace this team has been craving. They added wide receiver Isaac Tisla, a big target who can actually go up and high-point the ball, something Jared Goff has genuinely been missing in Detroit. They kept trading and maneuvering all the way through day 3, closing out a class that analysts described as producing at least 3 potential immediate starters, plus solid depth throughout. And now the Lions roll into the 2026 season, with the NFL oddsmakers treating them like the kings of the NFC. Las Vegas has Detroit favored in 14 of their 17 regular season games. 14? They are favored by 7.5 over the Saints in Week 1, favored by 9.5 over the Jets in Week 3, favored by 4.5 over the Vikings in Week 8. The books respect this team. The entire football world respects this team. But here is the part that every Detroit fan should tattoo on the inside of their eyelids, because this is the part that matters most when the season actually gets going. The schedule is not entirely kind to the Lions, and the rest differential battles throughout the year are going to matter. The Lions catch some advantages along the way. A mini-bye after a Thursday night game gives them extra rest heading into the Jets matchup early in the season. They enter the Week 7 Packers game with a whopping 7-day rest advantage after their bye week in Week 6. And yes, it is another early bye week, which the Lions fan base has grown to despise with a white-hot passion. They will have extra days of rest heading into multiple games, and in a league where the margins between winning and losing can come down to a single healthy body in a single key moment, those extra days of rest genuinely matter. But then there are the rough patches. A trip to Germany followed immediately by the Buccaneers getting their own bye week before facing Detroit is a nightmare scheduling scenario. Late in the season, the Lions face a brutal back-to-back stretch, where they deal with a short turnaround into a Monday Night Football hangover, while Chicago gets to rest up after playing on Christmas. And the Week 15 Sunday Night Football date at the Vikings, in Minnesota, in December, in what will almost certainly feel like playing inside a frozen wind tunnel, that game is going to define somebody's season. It always does. The Lions and Vikings split their series last year, and both of those losses came down to the same uncomfortable truth. When Detroit cannot run the football, the offense becomes dangerously one-dimensional. 3rd and 8 becomes a crisis. And the Vikings know it, the Lions know it, everybody knows it. The trench work they did in this draft, adding Miller, reinforcing the interior, bringing in fresh guard depth, is directly aimed at making sure that problem never happens again. If this team can run the ball at will, they will tear the Vikings apart. They have done it before. They put up 30 points a game on Minnesota when they were physically dominant in the trenches. The blueprint exists. They just have to execute it. And speaking of executing, let's go back to Brad Holmes one more time, because ultimately, whether you are slightly frustrated by the near miss with Baltimore or you are pumping your fist at how it all worked out, the bottom line is this. The Lions general manager has built something in Detroit that 5 years ago would have seemed like pure fantasy. Back-to-back NFC North division titles, multiple playoff wins, a team that Vegas legitimately treats as a contender in almost every single regular season game, and a draft process that, even when it flirts with recklessness, somehow produces meaningful NFL players year after year. Half the picks hit, half do not. That is the deal, that is the game every GM is playing. The difference with Holmes is that he is playing it with a roster that has legitimate stars, a coaching staff that develops talent, and a culture under Dan Campbell that makes players want to give everything they have. You can quibble with the trade-up tendencies, you can worry about future draft capital, but you cannot argue with the trajectory of this franchise. The Ravens video gave us a peek behind the curtain, and what we saw was a competitive, aggressive general manager who was willing to pay the price for the player he believed in, and smart enough to walk away when the board rendered it unnecessary. That is the balance every great GM has to find, and right now, in the Motor City, Brad Holmes is finding it. The 2026 Detroit Lions are coming. Vegas knows it, the schedule knows it, the Ravens' war room definitely knows it. The only question left is whether this team can turn all of that expectation and preseason respect into the thing Detroit fans have been waiting for longer than any of us should ever have to wait. And if they can run the football, nobody is stopping them. Nobody. If you made it this far, you already know what to do. Smash that like button, drop your Lions prediction in the comments below, and subscribe if you have not already, because we are just getting started on what is going to be one wild ride of an NFL season. Let us know, do you trust Brad Holmes after seeing that Ravens footage, or does it make you nervous? Sound off below. We read every single comment. See you on the next one.